Good? Yep. All right. So I know you had a chance to look at the video, and then I gave you that observation rubric to kind of look at and kind of score for yourself. After looking through that, what are some things that maybe stood out for you as far as being particularly satisfying about that lesson?
Well, going through this, the managing student behavior,
Okay.
I thought was really good. And I took some notes on here. I wrote that I moved about the class, monitored behavior, and reinforced positive behavior with rewards. It seemed like everyone was doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were completing their work. They were asking appropriate questions, and nothing wild, which was nice.
Okay. Anything other than behavior stand out for you as far as being particularly great about that lesson?
I think it was engaging to the students. I think they enjoyed it. I was pleased to see some excitement. One of the students mentioned, he was sitting next to you, and mentions, I love math, which I thought was, pretty cool, because a lot of kids don't. I had a student that's actually in a lower math group asked to participate, that happened to be there, and he wanted to jump in, and so.
So that was Oscar, right?
Yes, yes. So they were involved, they were enjoying it, they were liking it, they seemed to enjoy getting in front of the class and doing work on the whiteboard.
So when you looked through that and maybe through your rubric, what were some things that maybe were concerning to you?
Gave myself a 2 on communicating with students, that I didn't explain the purpose well and make clear to the students why they were doing it or how they could apply that to them. We just kind of jumped into it and did it. I didn't make a clear working objective for them.
Okay, so I would agree with you because when I went through the rubric, that I was looking at that too, and that level too. Some of the participation, it seemed like they were just going through a motion of a process of adding the fractions, but not really. I didn't hear you clearly communicate why that was important.
Right.
And so I struggled a little bit between the 2 and the 1 there. I saw some things like that. So why do we need to learn that?
Right.
Okay. So in thinking about that, what are some ways that you might establish that urgency or that need to learn a particular concept or skill to your students?
Well, I think especially for these guys with their, their world is so, just right around them, that in the beginning of the lesson, maybe brainstorm with the class some ways in which they could apply that skill, whether it be, as fractions, so it could be cooking at home or, tie it into their video game obsession somehow. But maybe just a conversation in the beginning on how it would work, how they could use it.
So do you ever discuss with the students, like, this is a Common Core state standard and this is what you need to know, and so here's a skill that's going to get you there?
We have talked about standards in class. This particular math group, though, is well below, and I think the whole concept of Common Core state standards is I don't know that they would grasp it or the significance of it anyway.
Okay.
What do you think on that?
Well, so let me tell you what I noticed. I noticed that you had the target is I will complete my assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Did that tell the students what they were going to learn in math?
No, it didn't. And the learning targets that I've used in class are usually more behaviorally focused and the student skills that they're working on, so that they can ultimately get transitioned into a mainstream class.
Okay. So I know that the focus of your classroom really is behavior, but generally behavior for students has to do with their learning. If we can keep them engaged in learning, we can manage those behaviors too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I get it. So we have behavior that impacts or impedes their learning, but we also need to know that we need them to be engaged in order to not have that behavior, right?
Okay.
So I want you to kind of start to think about that in your lessons around how can you get them engaged so that behavior fades away rather than just hammering behavior and then the education or the learning part seems to be that side note.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
No, I had been told in the past, though, that the learning targets for a class like that really should be behaviorally focused, or are you saying that should I have both?
I believe you want to have both.
Okay.
Because overall, the purpose of your classroom is to work on behavior, right? I mean, we know that. That's why the students are placed in there. But there's also, we're in school, and we
Right.
need to be learning. And so how can we use that engaged learning to decrease those behaviors that are getting in their way?
Okay.
So that's kind of how that shift
Okay.
needs to happen. So when I watched the video, I noticed like JJ was sitting in the back reading a book,
Correct.
and Shelby was kind of participating, but my gut tells me that's not her math level. Is that right?
No, she's higher than that, so, but because she's new, she's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, and she's been kind of resistant,
Mm-hmm.
and she's getting a lot better. So we're just she's kind of doing independent work, and we're starting to filter her into groups.
Okay.
JJ is in a mainstream math class,
Mhm.
so that period for him is an opportunity for him to do homework for his mainstream classes or work on his AR goal,
Okay.
which is what he was doing.
That's what he was doing.
Yeah. I asked him if he had any homework or anything he needed to be working on, and he said no, that he needed to work with his AR goal.
So do you have checks and balances in place for that, for him? When he says, no, I don't have any homework, how
I'm
do
in
you know that?
communication with his teachers, yeah.
So what do you think are some ways that you might be able to connect the student goal to the student work they're doing? So for instance, if the student's goal is to get into mainstream
Mhm.
classes, because that's what we want for all of our students that are in those separate
Mhm.
programs. How do you relate that to their work that they're doing in your classroom?
You mean as far as the standards and,
Just what they're learning, what their math or their reading skills, how are you working that into their overall goal or their ultimate goal of moving forward?
well, I'm trying to keep them up with standards and keep them, as close to grade level as I can so that transition would be smooth when their behavior is ready.
Okay.
Not sure if I answered that very well.
Okay. So I heard you say that one of the areas that concerned you was giving the kids a reason for the
Yes.
lesson.
Right.
And you came up with maybe doing some brainstorming kinds of activities. One of the things that I noticed is that the kids that were watching the other student
Mhm.
on there, how might you be able to get them engaged in what's happening rather than just watching? Do you think about that?
And I did think about that, and I didn't come up with a good answer on how to do that, other than having like warm-up exercises for them to be doing while the one student was working on the whiteboard. But then I don't know, do I want them engaged and paying attention to the process that the other student is doing, so that they can learn from them also?
So I've seen a couple of strategies used. One is where the students that you put the problem on the board, students at their table have a whiteboard, and they're all doing the problem, and then they show that. Another strategy might be that you have your students in pairs, and you do a commentator, like a sport, you can make it any kind of, even a game, kind of a sports commentator. Oh, he's drawing a box with 9 tiles in it. He's coloring in 1 to represent 1/9. So they're kind of walking through that whole process.
Right.
And then you have engagement with each other, and then you can have them report out to the whole group.
Okay.
So there's no chance of that passive type learning.
You know, one other thing I noticed on the video, there were a couple of students. One is Oscar, I can use names.
Yeah.
Right? Oscar was very intrigued with you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I was thinking about that, I'm like, so was I missing something? But then I think that that's really just part of his disability, is that there's something foreign he's gonna be.
Zeroed in on that.
Right, and then I noticed that Kobe, you know, and I think Kobe was I think he was engaged and paying attention, and he was getting everything, but he has ADHD to the point that he's just constantly, his head's just moving all the time. You know, he's not one to, I don't think he's able to sit, to just be still and pay attention to one thing.
And I didn't see that as being an issue.
Okay.
I mean, I felt like the kids were really excited to show off what they knew. They wanted to get up on the board. And so my thinking was, how can we give them that opportunity all at the same time? So like, for instance, that's why I say like the individual whiteboards, then they all get the opportunity to do it, and then they can share it. Rather than having to watch one person do it, and then I'm sitting here waiting for my turn, and then it's somebody else's turn.
Yeah.
Somebody else's turn.
So do a few problems like that and share, and then move into a practice on paper. Okay. I like that.
So, and I know that you and I have talked about that as well as in your lesson, like for current events. Remember, we talked about how you could get everyone involved rather than just the handful who are willing to talk. And we talked about maybe doing a pair share, doing a writing exercise with that. I think it's the same kind of concept. So I hear 2 things that we're gonna work on. One is developing that reason for the lesson, kind of that, why do we need to know how to add fractions with like denominators, right? And clearly stating what the target is of that math lesson. I think you definitely want to continue to keep your behavior goals set, given your group of students. I think they also need to know, what am I learning academically? And then also, what I would be expecting to see as I come in your classroom would be, how are you keeping all students engaged rather than just a handful? So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Tell me what you got from that lesson as far as expectations for moving forward.
For moving forward, developing the reason and purpose of the lesson and making sure that the students are clear on it, including, you know, the life application of it.
Right.
Because I think, I mean, I can tell them Common Core standards forever, but I would want them to be able to apply it to their lives also. And then work with the learning targets, you know, specific academic learning targets in addition to the behavior and keeping all the students engaged, which will probably be a forever battle.
given your group of students, that is definitely a task, but I think it's a task